Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing today in the book of Genesis. Chapter 48, we're going to pick it up about the middle of the chapter, verse 15. And he has, put his hands across each other to bless the two children of Joseph, Manasseh and Ephraim. And he's crossed them up for the purposes of putting his right hand upon the head of the younger, because the younger would be greater. He would prophesy, and that's essentially what he's saying. And he blessed Joseph. And let's just start with 10. Now the eyes of Israel were dim for age, so that he could not see. And he brought them near unto him, and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said unto Joseph, I had not thought to see thy face, and lo, God hath showed me thy seed also. Sorry about the words. And Joseph brought them out from between his knees, and he bowed himself with his face toward the earth, to the earth. So, part of the problem is I just don't see very clearly with these glasses. Let me try moving this text over here a little farther away. Okay, that's better. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim in his right hand toward Israel's left hand, and Manasseh in his left hand toward Israel's right hand, and brought them near unto him. And Israel stretched out his right hand, and laid it upon Ephraim's head, who was the younger, and his left hand upon Manasseh's head, guiding his hands wittingly. For Manasseh was the firstborn. And he blessed Joseph and said, God, before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac did walk, the God which fed me all my life long unto this day, the angel which redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads, and let my name be named on them, and the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. And when Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand upon the head of Ephraim, it displeased him. And he held up his father's hand, to remove it from Ephraim's head unto Manasseh's head. And Joseph said unto his father, Not so, my father, for this is the firstborn. Put thy right hand upon his head. And his father refused and said, I know it, my son, I know it. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. But truly his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his seed shall become a multitude of nations. And he blessed them that day, saying, In thee shall Israel bless, saying, God make thee as Ephraim and as Manasseh. And he set Ephraim before Manasseh. And Israel said unto Joseph, Behold, I die, but God shall be with you, and bring you again unto the land of your fathers. Moreover, I have given to thee one portion above thy brethren, which I took out of the hand of the Amorite with my sword and with my bow. And Jacob called unto his sons, and said, Gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. Gather yourselves together here. I'm sorry, let me just start that over. Gather yourselves together, and hear, ye sons of Jacob, and hearken unto Israel your father. Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity, and the excellency of power. Unstable as water thou shalt not excel, because thou wentest up to thy father's bed. Then defilest thou it. He went up to my couch. Simeon and Levi are brethren. Instruments of cruelty are in their habitations. O my soul, come not thou into their secret, into their assembly. Mine honor, be not thou united. For in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they digged down a wall. Cursed be their anger, for it was fierce, and their wrath, for it was cruel. I will divide them in Jacob, and scatter them in Israel. Judah, thou art he whom thy brethren shall praise. Thy hand shall be in the neck of thine enemies. Thy father's children shall bow down before thee. Judah is a lion's whelp, From the prey, my son, thou art gone up. He stooped down. He couched as a lion, and as an old lion. Who shall rouse him up? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come. And unto him shall the gathering of the people be. Binding his foal unto the vine, and his ass's colt unto the choice vine, he washed his garments in wine, and his clothes in the blood of grapes. His eyes shall be red with wine, and his teeth white with milk. Zebulun shall dwell at the haven of the sea, and he shall be for an haven of ships, and his border shall be unto Zidon. Issachar is a strong ass, couching down between two burdens. And he saw that rest was good, and that the land that it was pleasant, and bowed his shoulder to bear, and became a servant to tribute. Dan shall judge his people. As one of the tribes of Israel, Dan shall be a serpent by the way, an adder in the path, that biteth the horse heels, so that his rider shall fall backward. I have waited for thy salvation, O Lord. Gad, a troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at last. Out of Asher his bread shall be fat, and shall yield royal dainties. Naphtali is a hind loose. He giveth goodly words. Joseph is a fruitful bow, even a fruitful bow by a well, whose branches run over a wall. The archers have sorely grieved him, and shot at him, and hated him. But his bow abode in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of Jacob. From thence is the shepherd, the stone of Israel, even by God of thy father, who shall help thee, and by the Almighty, who shall bless thee with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that lieth under, blessings of the breasts and of the womb. The blessings of thy father have prevailed above the blessings of my progenitors unto the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. They shall be upon the head of Joseph, and upon the head of him that was separate from his brethren. Benjamin shall raven as a wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is that their father spake unto them, and blessed them. Every one according to his blessing he blessed them. And he charged them and said unto them, I am to be gathered unto my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, which is before Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought with the field of Ephron the Hittite for a possession of a burying place. There they buried Abraham with Sarah his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah his wife. And there I buried Leah. The purchase of the field and of the cave that is therein was from the children of Heth. And when Jacob had made an end of commanding his sons, he gathered up his feet into the bed, and yielded up the ghost, and was gathered unto his people. And so Israel died. So we start with the blessing of Joseph separately. He gives him much as, when he deceived his father, let's say, to obtain the blessing. There was something he was blessed. He intended to bless his firstborn apart, as to give him a special part. And as he went on to bless Esau, the blessing was not so much a blessing. And same thing with chapter 49 here. This is not so much a blessing as he's giving him his final words and advice, and sort of predictions, because it is definitely, I may tell you what shall befall you in the last days. This is basically the prophecy of Jacob. Where Jacob is not just the patriarch, he is a man of God. And that isn't always, imperfect as often they are. That's why I say it's like we should not be shy and consider ourselves lesser men than came before us. Lest we should consider ourselves incapable of the same efforts. You know what I mean? And we always hold up the apostles as these towering figures, and to us they are, and we shouldn't bring them down so much as to say, that we can, as they are, so we can become. And it's not even a particularly high calling, since the true high calling of every believer is to be like Christ. And we're aspiring to be like Christ. I'm not aspiring to be like Peter. I am like Peter. I am like Thomas. I have doubts. I have problems. I'm not like Christ. He's the one I aspire to. And I don't aspire to be like Jacob. I am like Jacob, in many ways. Faulted, but also my life, I pursue God. I haven't attained to his ancient age, but I have the benefit of his words and many, many more beside. Many more beside. And this part, to me, this is one of the most interesting parts of Genesis. It feels the most raw. It's like, these are the words of Jacob. When people say they come the books of Moses, he's the one who put the books together, but Genesis comes before Moses. The idea that, would there be stuff in Babylon? I could see certain things, parts of Genesis being parts that were, like when it says, like when we were talking about that last chapter, where it gives a little note of like where something is unto this day, and that kind of, those comments to me sound like stuff that's later saying like, yeah, it's still there. But the stories obviously predate that. The idea that it would all be made up in Babylon in 500 is just an atheist's wet dream. I don't seriously consider that. But the idea that it wasn't just sat down and Moses closed his eyes and his hand just wrote the book of Genesis, I don't believe in that either. And the Bible doesn't say it happened like that. So, but as far as like something that's like original source, this has that feel. All these blessings do. They seem like the kind of thing that you would memorize, even if it's word of mouth. But, they say, they think of, they'll talk about, written, I was having an argument with someone, discussion, whatever. The common belief is, writing was invented in Sumer. No, that's where we discovered it. It's like, I don't know. It's like, you have to decide to write down on things that don't perish. The thought that writing just sprang whole out of nowhere, and the commerce, someone's like, hey, let's make a mark of some sort. Like that, humans didn't think of that many times before. I'm very skeptical of that claim. Pardon me. It's just So, let's see. We're going to begin talking about it at verse 15 in chapter 48, because that's where we were. So, when he blesses his son, he goes immediately to God. What is the idea of blessing? To bless is to speak to someone. Well, there's verbal blessing, but in the New Testament, the Apostle James, in the book of James, he says, what good is it to tell someone, be filled? Be blessed. But you don't do the things necessary when they have need. You know what I mean? When they're hungry, if you don't feed them. When they're thirsty, if you don't give them drink. But you say, bless you. It's an empty blessing. It's kind of like people say, we're with you spiritually or something like that. It's a nice gesture. It's not necessarily void of meaning. People act like it's nothing. No, it's not nothing. That's wrong. Because by the word of God, he created the heavens and the earth. So, because some people are too afraid to speak a kind word or a word of blessing. So don't say it's nothing. There are plenty of people who only curse, who only beat down and they run people down with their words. That's all they ever do. So to say that you can't do good with your words is also false. But, hey, we don't want to, but you can make empty words. You can do zero with words by just spouting empty platitudes. And so we do not want to let blessing become empty platitudes. We just say empty, nice things, right? And so when he talks about blessing Joseph, he talks about how his fathers walked before God. We've talked about from the beginning of Genesis. Part of the important idea that Genesis conveys at the beginning, that man was to walk initially man walked in the presence of God. Having the knowledge of good and evil, it seems that, and that God walked in the presence of God, but even from the beginning, even from the very beginning, when God was present with Adam, he's also not present with Adam. That's why Adam believed, or that's why it occurred to Adam, it would occur to Adam to potentially hide himself from God, since God was not apparently obvious. This is something I talk about frequently as being an insight on existence that we should think about as in terms of what is the purpose of it. A lot of times people talk about, in the movies, as a kid, I used to watch public television. For some reason, they played Monty Python, and I would watch their things, and I've seen their movies and stuff. And I think it has to do with some of the doctrine of the Church of England, because they had an official state church, and they used to, I think, claim, at least to some degree, that, God, you can't prove God exists because that would eliminate the need for faith. And I've always talked about, I don't agree with that at all. You look at, if you were living in the Exodus, right? Let's say, you're a total atheist, you don't believe in God. But let's say you were living through an Exodus-like event with a pillar of fire in the sky and the sea parting. Let's say you witnessed that with your eyes. You would probably think you had pretty decent evidence for the existence of God or something like God, right? Technology so advanced that it was indistinguishable from the miraculous or whatever. However you want to justify that, and there are certain things, because on some level I'd like to ask people what would do for proof. People often will ask me, prove God exists. I'm like, well, I believe God exists because he proved it to me. And I always tell people, like, you have to go to God to get proof from God. Why would you ask me to prove? It's like asking me to prove my wife exists and then she won't come. Like, I can't make her leave the house, let's say. This is not true, but let's say I have someone, I had a friend growing up in school. We used to joke because his mom was so reclusive, no one ever saw her. I would go to his house and it would be a disembodied voice from upstairs. Now, we exaggerated a bit, but you can see how, proving someone else's existence is harder than proving your own existence, which people will even tell you can't do. Prove to me that you exist. I want to call it, it's not a meme, it's like an old trope, right? You can't even, because you can just sit there and be skeptical, right? I can fold my arms and refuse to accept evidence because there's always some caveat. I could be hallucinating, right? I don't need to believe my eyes. But come on, if you were living through it, you would believe. You would believe. And you would understand, you would think, oh, well, you know what? Hey, no matter what, I do think that whatever's going on, even if I don't think this is like an all-powerful God, like let's say I think it's an alien or a man with technology or the Wizard of Oz, I don't know. I think it's some other explanation. I would still think whatever that other thing is real and it's watching, right? But that's the thing about God. People say God isn't real, and that means that no one's really watching. And whatever you do in secret, you can get away with. And those things you do in secret that you're ashamed of, maybe you don't even need to be ashamed of them. Maybe we can change society so that people don't feel shame. No, they will create. It's funny because they'll act like they want to create a society without shame, but instead what they will do is put shame on all those who would do righteously. Anyone who wants, that's what it becomes. The only thing shameful in society is to be upright. What? You don't fornicate in the streets? We all fornicate in the streets. Fornicating in the streets is what people do. You refuse? What's wrong with you? They call evil good and good evil. They put light for dark and dark for light. Darkness for light. So, men of God know that they walk before God. Even when God is not obviously around. That would have helped Adam, not think, Adam, where are you, Adam? Adam thought he was hidden. But we know that there's no place. All things are naked and open before him with whom we have to do. Even if he isn't, let's say God, you say, how can God watch it? He doesn't really have to. Like every moment be tuning in on you. It's all run. It's all set up. God only I believe in a mostly deterministic universe where God tweaks things here and there to get what he wants. That's all he has to do is set it up one way. If you understand how all things work, down to the vibration of the molecules, you can predict which way every ping pong ball is going to bounce. And not only that, you can determine it ahead of time, which is what he actually does, by the way he creates things from the beginning. But also in it, he himself intervenes. But he doesn't need to be watching everything technically. He can just access your conscience at any moment, and you will tell him what you've done and confess all. Every idle word, every idle thought, every idle deed, and all the less idle things that one gets up to. So we walk before God, and the fathers walked before God. It's something to be emphasized. You are under observation. Now, he's not a cosmic cop. That's why he stands back. He doesn't want to be the cosmic cop. He wants to live in a loving relationship with us, but it's going to be an upright one. But we need to be able to walk on our own 2 feet to a degree. Or, can we? I don't know. I guess the point is to do right even when God isn't looking or when you think he isn't. That would be the ultimate standard of righteousness, which we cannot actually attain. That's why Christ died, because that is what ought to be. What I've described, God isn't around, but we're, like when I leave home, I expect my kids aren't going to trash the place or do things that I would not approve of. Now, will they? They probably might, of course. I don't expect, I do my best to prevent it and to teach them to do right. And generally, I get good results, but I'm not going to say I never had my children ever disobey me. No, I've kept it to a minimum though. And if you can swiftly punish evil, you can train them up in the right way. And here's the thing is that God has often punished my evils. He's given me chastisement, so I know he's there. He has a way of getting my attention. And if you seek him and you commit yourself to him, that's a sign that he's committed himself to you. And you will get results. Because that's the truth. We didn't seek him. He sought us. He gave his son long before we ever even thought, oh God, it's like he was looking for us before we even started looking for him. That's the thing. But here's the thing. When you start doing those things, that's the manifestation of his activity in your life. Those who walk before God are those whom God has called to do so. Because you don't just do that. That's not the natural course of things. That wasn't my natural course. That's not where I was naturally headed. God was always in front of me, pulling me this way, but I wanted to go that way. But overall, I do, from the beginning, I've known I walk before him. But like the angel which redeemed me from all evil. The God which, he fed me. They walked before him and he fed me. From the beginning, God put man in the garden, in a world in which it rains on the just and the unjust. We can live. And sometimes we make that hard for each other. And the world is not always a friendly place. There's evil in the world. Volcanoes explode and they bury your city without warning. It happens. The earth opens up and it swallows people up. Men's hearts fail them for fear. Men's hearts fail them for looking after the things which are going on in the world. But still, I confess that it's good to be alive. I want to be alive. The only thing that makes me not like living is that my life isn't as good as I know it could be. You know what I mean? That's why people want to commit suicide. It's like, my life isn't as good as it could be. Really, is it just that life isn't worth living? No, it's this life that people start complaining about. It's their particular life. But if we take hold of God's promises, we can have an abundant life. But we have to find the way to believe it. There's no way other than I know than to seek the Lord himself, because he's the one who can give you faith. Why did they go to Jesus saying, Lord, increase our faith? Because he's the one who can do it. You don't have to have faith to come to God, but come to God to get faith. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. Yeah, I have a little faith. That's why I chided myself when I received the Holy Spirit. I have a little faith, Paul. And God will feed you. He's fed me all my life. He's fed me with good things and with things that were good but did not seem good. With chastisement. No chastisement seems for the good time pleasant. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me, as you lead me to the green pastures. As Jacob was, a cattle. He kept cattle, let's just say, by trade, and sheep. He was a shepherd. More than a shepherd, though. He was a shepherd of shepherds. He was an owner of. He was more like a rancher, really. It's like with lots of hands. But he knew about you feed the animals, right? And then mostly that just means you lead them to where the food is, and then they eat it. And God leads us to where things are, and we give us two hands to work, and we find, and we make, and we do, and we live, and he feeds us. We don't expect manna from heaven all the time, but sometimes it's there, And the angel which redeemed me from all evil. I want to look at that word redeemed, because I just wonder what it specifically is, because we could look at that from several different ways. To act as kinsman, to redeem, to buy back. Notice it's translated buy back, or also avenger 13 times. Redeemer, redeem. Let's see. What's the lot of stuff in the thing, in the lexicon. A primitive root to redeem according to the Oriental law of. Why is it not quite on the page? Probably because I got it too big. A primitive root. No, it's not a prime root. Arnold Murray fans, sorry. To redeem according to the Oriental law of kinship. By Orient, they mean Near East. The ancient Near East was called the Orient. To be the next of kin, and as such to buy back a relative's property, marry his widow, etc. To do that thing, to act as kinsman, to fulfill the obligations. But the idea is, first, when you fall on hard times, the one who comes and buys you back from slavery. We've talked about how people, you could be redeemed from slavery or redeemed from debt. And that idea of the one who comes, like your family member who gets you out of jail, basically. If you go to jail, who's going to come and bail you out? Your kinsman redeemer. You get stuck in the mud with a truck. Who's going to come with the pickup truck and pull you out with the chains? Your kinsman redeemer. You find yourself $10,000 in debt to the mob. Who are you gonna go to get the money to pay them? Your kinsman. You're gonna find some family member or whatever, and that's the person who's gonna save your skin in the direst situations. And when he talks about all evil, that's what he means is the big calamities of life. Evil is going to be calamity in that sense, not sin here particularly, though. The evil that comes about from the consequence of our sin is also something we need redemption from. That's why I said, who's going to bail you out of prison, out of jail? You don't get bailed out of prison, you get paroled. Who's going to parole you? Who's going to bribe the governor to get you that pardon? Your kinsman redeemer. All right, but it's true. That's the role. The guy who's going to come and do what it takes to get you out of the spot. And definitely, he does redeem us from sin. That is why when we enter into Christ through faith, we are considered, according to the Apostle Paul, the authority, and the Jew of the tribe of Benjamin, who could say that we are grafted in and are become one with them, the enmity being destroyed. It used to be a greater enmity between Jew and the Gentile. The Jews really look down their noses at the Gentiles. Some people would say they still do. I'm sure among some they probably do, right? Just like there's plenty of hatred the other way also, right? A lot of Gentiles still hate the Jews. But in some ways, having been, through the diaspora and stuff, in a lot of ways, a lot of that enmity is actually diminished. Many Jews do not see Christians as just enemies or Gentiles as just enemies. They live with them. They'll talk about Judeo-Christian and all that. And that's meant to be, I don't usually talk like that, but it is, of course, it's not, to show kindness in some regard is not to deny the truth. I mean, to be, I hate to use the word inclusive, but to include the Jews in those kind of political discussions, some people get offended at it. It's like, yes, because it is a more of a Christo-Judaic tradition in America, maybe a little more true, right? But even so, it's a good thing that the enmity is lessened just in the overall, but in the spiritual, it's completely gone. So we are brought in as like adopted children into the family of Abraham, Isaac. We become the children of Abraham through faith. And Christ is our kinsman through faith. He is our kinsman redeemer. He has bought us with a price and redeemed us from all evil. The angel, notice the angel. One of the things a lot of Christian scholars believe is that the angel of the Lord of the Old Testament is the pre-incarnate Christ. And that's a theory that I definitely feel a strong amount of attachment to, I think. I don't positively say that's, you notice I always am just like, well, that's what some people believe. And I don't say, when I talk about faith, when I say what I believe, to me, the things I believe are these concrete central doctrines of the faith. That's why where I have doubts, I let loose. I let you have it and I think it's good. Just like this, it's for the same reason. Doubting Tom, I accept I see that. I'm going to accept I put my fingers in his wounds. I'm not going to believe. It's important to allow your, people who are in a role as teachers and stuff. The judgment begins with us, and it should begin while we're still alive, not when we go to heaven. To judge your teachers harshly from the beginning, and as harshly as they deserve. And I think that when you humbly lay before people your own faults, you're going to be judged less harshly. That's just as a matter of course. When you humbly come forward, when you're always proudly hiding, proudly building walls around yourself and borders. I mean, to prevent, we need to have certain boundaries, of course, in life. But when it comes to certain things, you think about Paul and the fact that when you get redeemed from prison, that's a matter of public record. And a lot of my sins and what Christ did for me, I consider it kind of public. That's why I don't shy away from talking about a lot of things that did me harm, the evils that compassed me about. But God delivered me from them all. Like I said, I don't count anything that God subjected me to be a true evil. I've had bad things happen to me. I've been injured. I've been hurt. But I live yet. I didn't kill me. The Lord almost, I feel like I wish he wouldn't. I feel like I've had a lot of close calls. And I thought the point was to show me that how one, I'm safe, but also to warn me, I don't know. Like Jacob, I often, I think about Jacob when he was fearful of like what his sons had done, Simeon and Levi. They'd gone through that town and killed all the men, and spoiled the city. And, and he thought maybe some evil would come out of it, but the Lord delivered him, despite the wrath of his sons. And I'm with Jacob on that. It's too much. Too much. You don't want to. There's a lot of things, we got to be careful in being redeemed from evil. God loves mercy, especially in those who have received it, So, anyways, so he's redeemed us from all evil. Yes, even the evil of sin. The angel of the Lord delivers us. Like I said, to me, who is that angel which redeems us from all evil? Yes, he will send his angels. They shall bear you up with wings, lest thou dash thy foot up in their wings, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. The same scripture that Satan quoted when he wanted to tempt Jesus. But there's truth in it, though, that God does use his angels to protect you and to do all these things that you don't often see. But also, as Jesus said, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. You don't just wander into evil expecting, I said, one of the things I try to be conscious of, it's like, I'm always afraid of dying by accident because I've always been a little accident prone. I tend to get lost in thought and then oversight, and, I've had a lot of close calls in my life, like nearly losing digits, stuff like that. I need all my fingers. I got to play the guitar, right? And the Lord's delivered me from all those calamities, and I try to be careful. And in ways that he knows my infirmities. I pray he keep delivering me. And if he doesn't, I'll still bless the Lord and and do what I continue to do my best with the gifts that remain. But I would, I'm thankful for all the things he's brought me through, and Jacob also. Bless the lads. One of the chief occupations of life is, be fruitful and multiply. You are to occupy until he comes. That means we got to do the things in life that God has called humankind to do from the beginning. Yes, when Jesus came, he said, come, follow me, sell everything, come on. It was time. But then afterward, there's a lot of stuff in the New Testament. Okay, husbands, love your wives. Don't provoke your children to wrath. Wives, obey your husbands, etc. And some of those things people think are out of style. It's like, what, ladies, if you didn't marry a man that you thought was above you, I don't know what you were thinking. But even so, there's something you still admire in the man, so remember to keep it there. And if you're so clever, you should be able to manipulate him into being a guy you could obey every point. You got to be clever. Be even more clever. Ever so clever. I always think that's just like funny because people they want things to be handed to them. Like I say, guys, don't say, you got to obey me. No. You got to make yourself an authority that people obey. I have about me the air of command. I get people to listen and move and do. I know how to use my authority. Even in the way I start, just the way I'm talking right now. You believe me because you hear the way I talk and you know what authority sounds like. I know how to command children. I know how to make them go about and do what they're supposed to do. And thereby I learn to listen to God. And I do those activities, bring up those children so that they may be blessed. And the things, Jacob's criticism of his children is also a critique of his own work. And as he gets, I really want to start talking about the brethren, but let's see if we can get through the end of this chapter before the study's over, right? But this is a critical, we could just, bless them and blah, blah, blah. It just becomes this empty stuff. This is, like I said, this is worthy of dwelling on. We understand. We don't think like this in our day-to-day lives. What do we eat? What do we drink? What should we do? What movie are we going to watch? How will we bless God with our lips and make it real? Let my name be named on them. Because, and this happened, Israel became Israel. Ephraim and the nations and the other tribes which became associated with it were known as Israel. And then the kingdom of Judah was the kingdom of Judah. And it became the Jews. Now, modern Israel, people will say, well, that's the tribe of Judah. But I disagree to a certain degree. In that I don't think, like I said, There's no precise tally. Probably should look better at the biblical evidence, but I've, as far as I don't have it at my fingertips, but I've gone through pains on several occasions to demonstrate the presence of other tribes with Judah after the split. Because remember, the split was along geographic lines and political lines, meaning the king of Judah controlled the territory of Judah and Benjamin. The king of Israel controlled Ephraim, the largest tribe in the north, and all the other tribes. You know what I mean? So they had a larger kingdom and became a multitude of nations in that regard. And that was the tribe of Joseph. I mean, but though half of his tribe, Joseph, Benjamin, was with Judah. And though Benjamin was always a very small tribe, it was the smallest tribe of Israel, and struggled to become much bigger because of the fact of there being near genocides of their tribe, because they did such bad things in the midst of Israel that they almost cut themselves off. Meaning the other tribes almost destroyed Benjamin at one point. Nearly. And had made a vow that would actually, they had to deal with the fact that they had sworn something that would actually result in the destruction of the tribe. And so they had to come up with a solution around it. You may recall, they basically let them kidnap women in order, because they had sworn not to give them any of their daughters. But that fact that they bred, I hate to use the word bred, but they intermarried across tribes means that in Judah you had Ephraim. And in the reckoning of God, the tribes still exist in God's reckoning. Now, I doubt the Jews, I don't know to what degree, what I should say is, not so much I doubt, I have no idea to what degree they know what tribe they are of, and it's not something I actually go into much. But I do know from the New Testament that we have the tribe of Asher represented. We have the tribe of, was it Issachar or Naphtali or Zebulun? I think there's a man of Zebulun or a woman of Zebulun, whatever. Certainly also in the return in Ezra and Nehemiah, you see not all the tribes represented, but people of different tribes. So the other, at least at that time, so there are different people from different tribes involved in the political entity of Judah. So it is not just Judah as it is often played off in the new, because just it was a political thing that they were known as the Jews. And so you shouldn't allow the fact that the blanket term Jew became their entire national identity any more than the idea of Israel be cover for the idea that it's called Israel. That doesn't mean that there aren't people from Judah in there. Of course not. Anyways, I'm going a little off on the side there, but looking after the next generation, let my name be on them, the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. Which they did, and I would say, though the political entity of Israel God did cast off, and those people in that generation God did cast off, but he always promised that there would be a remnant to return. A very small remnant. Except the Lord of hosts had left us a very small, and from that very small remnant, just like God said to Moses, I'll kill them all, and I'll make of you a great nation. Because he would still be, hey, you're still the son of Jacob, Moses. Even though Moses pled for the children of Israel that he would not cast them off. Ultimately, every one of them died in the wilderness in that generation, except for Caleb and Joshua. None of them got to see the promised land. God was not happy. Just like in the days of the Assyrian, all that generation, God cut them off. And there were some of their children survived in that remnant, and then God sent prophets and priests and so on to preach to them, and they came back to Israel and replenished the tribes, and God knows, and many of them knew also who they were of. That's why in the New Testament, you see the tribes represented, not all of them, but you see hints of it in Asher. And in the book of Revelation, it's not like, oh, where are we going to get all these people of Joseph and these tribes? I mean, why was it written in Revelation that the tribes would be sealed if they didn't exist? They did exist, but they were all called Jews by then, the remnant. And I'm talking about the remnant. Those who were carried into captivity, yeah, that generation, they died off. They were left few in number among the heathen where they were scattered, as God promised. And if they had listened to him, if they had from thence called upon him, he would bring them back. He already did. I said, those who are not brought back and reunited with the family, they're lost and cast off. And the idea that, like, well, their descendants who have 1/billionth Jew in them, they still count. Whatever. Only if they find Christ. Come on. Is it like the one drop rule, for being an Israelite? I don't know. And I say, ultimately, we got to look to the angel that redeems, the messenger of God who redeems. I hope you don't, when it calls him the angel, again, the angel of the Lord is the Lord. That's why when people wrestle with the angel of the Lord, like Jacob, or in the book of Judges, when, who was it who met the angel of the Lord there and said, well, they said, I've seen God. I think it was Gideon, but maybe one of the other judges who said, I've seen God to the face and I didn't die. Meaning when you see God in the person of Christ, he is, as always, as in his incarnation, he is some way not displaying the fullness of his divinity. You're not seeing while he is the fullness of God, you are not observing the fullness of God. Though what you're looking at, in some sense, you're looking at Jesus, you're looking at the fullness of God. Though he's not exhibiting the absolute nature of his power. You're not seeing into that dimension at all. And like the apostles got a glimpse of that when they saw him transfigured. So let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. And when Joseph saw this, father laid his right hand. So he does this. Joseph doesn't like this crossing but blessings. But you know what? Sometimes that's the way it is. Sometimes the elder and it's the younger. Joseph was already not the eldest son himself. He was the eldest of his mother, but not of all his brethren. And he was already getting blessed above them. But, not beneath, but not Benjamin above him. And it's not just for belovedness, though. Joseph is arguably one of the more excellent children of Jacob. Perhaps the most excellent, from the side of Jacob. And maybe from the side of the Lord. Joseph is, of the sons of Jacob, the premier. And Judah, he certainly has a lot to say for Judah also, and he seems to be the second. And this is how it happens with their nation. When it splits into Joseph and Judah. Those are the two brothers that end up the country getting torn apart over. But it ultimately does come back together, just like in Christ, all things are brought together in him. Both even Jew and Gentile being reconciled. If Jew and Gentile reconciled, how much more Joseph and Judah? In fact, you already see, it's interesting because the hint of reconciliation is given already in the story. In that when Joseph was sold, into captivity, as Israel went into captivity to the Assyrians, Judah, in the end, when he was the one who confessed his sin before Joseph, when Joseph was elevated to that position, and in that way, I think helped with the healing between him and his brethren. I was going to say brethren, and that's brothers. So he tried to take his father's hand and switch sides. And he says, not so, my father. This is the firstborn. Put your hand upon his. This is how it's supposed to go. As I said, the customs of men, these are customs of men. It's not a thing of God. That's a big message. It's always in the Bible, by the way. The customs of men you might read about in the Bible, like cutting animals up and walking between the carcasses, that's the men way of things. You know why Abel and Cain were making sacrifices to God? Because they were sinners and needed sacrifices or whatever. They needed to try to please God with something external because they were not pleasing him somehow in and of themselves. Obviously, there's offerings required. God, we need, what can I do to reconcile myself with you? And Abel, whatever he was doing, God was pleased with it. Cain, no. You got sin. Either coming or, I don't know, righteous Abel. He was called righteous Abel. So I'm not, again, I would say with all the fathers, none of them were Christ. Jacob is not perfect. He didn't raise his family perfectly. Long time ago, when I was young, I was talking with my family, my parents, my mother, and I said, I had a critique. I was young. I was probably 20, 21. I had a critique. I think I was 21, and I was married, and I had a critique of the way I had been raised, and I didn't like it, and I didn't like what was going on then. And my mother said, "Wait till you have children," and I took that challenge. I said, "Okay, when my children are grown up, they can tell me how I did, and I'll just take it. If they say I did a bad job, I'm gonna say you're probably right, because you would know better than me." I know I didn't do a perfect job. That's part of the thing is like, if you're humble, people will judge you less harshly. When you exalt yourself and build yourself up constantly, people are more likely to look at the cracks in your facade and wonder, I'm not so sure you're so great. Let another man's lips praise you. I believe in that. And I also believe in what it says of a bishop, having ruled his house well, his own house well, his children in subjection. What do people say about his kids? That helps you judge whether a man is worthy to be in a position over the church. My whole life I've been auditioning before God because I know who makes men to be over other men. Who sets men in power over others? God does. If you want to be in a position of power, what do you go to school, get a degree, go to men? You can take that route. Or you can go directly to him who has the real power. And then you have authority that transmits not just in the earth, but into the utmost, into the everlasting. Tap into that power. Tap into that authority. Wrestle against the principalities of the darkness of this world and not the leaves and the grass and the fish. Everyone's wrestling against the earth itself instead of the spirits that run it. All the cattle, all the earth is God's. He'll give us of what he's fed me all my days. I've worried many times. It was a total waste. Total waste of effort. Total waste of heartache. Total waste of emotion. I should have rejoiced my way through life. But then I would not have learned. So I can tell you. He shall also be a people. He shall also be great. His younger brother shall be greater. Nothing bad is ever really said about Manasseh. As far as I forgot, even in the... Does he get forgotten in the... No, because he just blesses Joseph. He doesn't do... No, we'll have to go through that. Obviously I'm jumping ahead. I've never memorized this passage. I always remember looking forward to getting to the end of Genesis because Jacob's prophecy is really fascinating because it's like, something to bear in mind as you read the Old Testament and the New Testament, as you watch the world, as you look at history. Because it's like, it's one thing to say, even if you say, they did it in Babylon. Well, why didn't you mean they didn't write this after World War II? You mean they didn't write this after the Romans? You mean, like people always try to say, they wrote it after the fact. Well, Jacob is writing it after the fact of observing his children. And he sees their lives as prophetic of the life of the nations that will come, because he knows the promises of God, that God's going to make him into a great nation, that these 12 tribes are the nations that God promised would come of Abraham, and that in them would all the children of the earth be blessed. Jacob is sitting at the point of that and knowing these things. And being a prophet and a man of God, he speaks to his sons and tells them the future. I believe, Joseph Joseph did come again to the land of his fathers, but as far as I know, it was his bones. They brought out the bones of Joseph. Because I believe, was he not we'll get to that. Because they do bring him out. Because Jacob, I think they go and they bury him. Yeah, they go and bury him in the same place because that's his request. They take him back and they bury him. But they stay in Egypt because I believe either the famine's still going on. It didn't say the exact time scale, right? We could still be in the midst of the famine. And it definitely, Jacob gives you this sense that now he sees Joseph. He's going to die. There's no putting it off anymore. Death is imminent. One portion above your brethren, meaning he counted of the land that he took away from the Amorite with my sword and my bow. This gets me with the Amorite. Because I don't know when he fought the Amorites. Did we miss that? This is the first mention that I know of. But again, there were a lot of intervening years, right? When Joseph was 20 years in Egypt, or whatever, or Luz. Why it's still Luz? I don't want Luz. I want Amorite. Amorite. Okay. Amorite. Okay, well, I want to see anything later in Genesis. No, last time we heard the Amorites was back in Genesis 15 when it was talking about the land that he would give unto Abraham. The land of the Hittites, the Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Cadmonites, the Hittites. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was on the screen. Here we go. Oh, I have that too high. Hold on here. Hold on. There we go. Genesis 15. I was looking at the... we go from Genesis 15 there, Amorites. That's back when the Lord is making a covenant with Abraham. But there's no mention of them till Genesis 48. So if Jacob fought with the Amorites, it is not mentioned until this point. And they were the chief enemy of Israel coming out. That was one of the number one nations they fought against to take the promised land. The Amorites. They were one of the ones you were supposed to be kind to the Moabites and the Ammonites and to Esau. They were not to try to exterminate Esau. But the Amorites, they were to fight at a war of absolute conquest. They would fight with the Amorites till they destroyed them. That's the history of it. So the land that he had fought and obtained from the Amorite, I don't know how he's still defending that from Egypt, but he's given him a double portion. And he's saying, I've given you a double portion by taking your 2 sons as mine. Remember, we talked about that last time. Jacob says, these are my sons. The rest of your children will be counted among their brethren as grandchildren, but these 2 shall be for my sons. And ever after they have been regarded as sons instead of Joseph. And thereby Joseph obtained the double blessing. As Ephraim meant very fruitful, or fruitful in the plural, or double fruitful, so Joseph was double fruitful in that he had those 2 sons blessed by his father, and thereby giving him the double portion of the firstborn, because Jacob wanted to disinherit Reuben in that sense. As far as, it's not that he doesn't, Reuben gets an inheritance, obviously he gets a portion, but Joseph gets the double portion, the blessing of the firstborn. And so also he gives the blessing of the firstborn among Ephraim and Manasseh to Ephraim, who is the younger. But because Joseph sees already that he is the greater. How does he see this? Because God, through the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, has shown it to him. That's how we have to understand it from our understanding of the New Testament. And also that's generally how it works with the prophets anyways. The Spirit of God came, with Samson, the Spirit of God would come on him and he would do amazing feats of strength. And I tell you what, from when I experienced the power of God, when I received the Holy Spirit, I express doubts about some of the things they say about the text of the Bible, because I love the text of the Bible. And the one thing about the text of the Bible is you want to be honest with God and let the word be the word. And when Jesus told the parables, he knew they weren't literally true. And that's why they are the truth. They don't have to be literally true to be the truth. Same thing with a lot of things in the Bible. They don't necessarily have to be literally true. Like I say, if I remember I told people, I'm like, the story of Job could be completely just a story. What do you think that didn't happen? Of course things like that happen. It happens all the time. That's because it's true. The story of Job is true. It's a totally truth-telling story. But the author may very well know. Let me put it this way: if the author of Job knew that it wasn't a true story, he wasn't intending for you to think it was, and to do so would be wrong. Right? Now, it may have been completely true, like literally true. I'm just saying, the presumption that it had to be is such offensive to me. I don't like that. Okay, wait. But what I was getting at, when I felt the Spirit come over me, you bet I believe one man could slay 50 with the jawbone of an ass. I could do anything with that power. You know what I mean? Anything he wants me to do. Like Jesus up on the temple. Throw yourself down because anything's possible with God. True that. Don't tempt God, but it's true. It's totally true. So have faith, have confidence, anything. As I said, I know people who think about stockpiling weapons and food. It's like, God has fed me all my life. If I die, I die. But I will use the opportunities he give me. And my weapons of war, I've got them all the time. You have to cut out my tongue. And even then, I can speak. If God wants me to speak, I'll speak like an ass, like a dumb ass that doesn't have words, because you don't need a tongue for words to emanate out from the mouth, because the Spirit has powers beyond the material world. I certainly believe that. But like I said, I don't think the Bible was written by automatic writing or some other weird thing. It's not claimed to have been. I said, when I question the authorship of Moses, I'm just saying I think it predates Moses. I don't think Moses just wrote all this. I think he had source material somehow. Though, like I said, in some degrees, they would, at least early on, he didn't know. I don't know. Maybe the idea that it had to all be from scratch again, that seems odd. So, but I definitely believe in Moses. I believe in the people in the Bible. Well, they'd say, well, didn't you question Job? It's like, yeah, well, I mean, like I said, that could be a story. Why not Moses? That's different. Moses is kind of like Jesus. He's too real a figure. He's historical. Same thing with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You get to Noah, it's a little more sketchy, but I have a tendency to believe, I confess. Even the things that are maybe hard for people in the modern day to believe, I still have a tendency to think more literally than figuratively. But, like I said, I think there's some aspects that's like, well, that's the way it's written. So that's what we have. I know the things that I put my trust in, and that has more to do with the Lord Jesus and the power of his resurrection. That's where my faith is most strongly centered, because that is where the power lies. Okay, so I thought we might dip into this, but we're out of time. So we'll pick it up at verse 1 of chapter 49 on Monday. That should be exciting. We already read it. We're going to read it again to refresh our minds on Monday morning. And so until then, thanks for joining me. I look forward to being back on Monday, and we'll probably next week. Depends on how long that chapter could take a while, honestly. We might spend all next week on that chapter. That would not surprise me. I'm definitely not going to try to rush, because we're going to be taking that one in a line-by-line fashion. We've been going kind of fast because there's a lot of narrative, and but here we have a lot of food for thought. So until next time, thanks for joining me, and I'll be very blessed to join you. This might be loud.